talking about. So without any further ado, I appreciate all you folks coming down here tonight, and well, let's get on with it. Mr. Mark Koernke.
Of Michigan, P.O. Box 1809, Dearborn, Michigan. 48121 is the postal zone number, and their telephone number is 313-382-8282. An easy one to remember. Again, that's 313-382-8282, and with the Henry Ford Public Library. Well, semi-public. Well, sort of public. Well, you know. People's Library. Now, the People's Revolutionary People's Library. Where you must have a license for everything you do.
That's America.
As we all know now, don't we? Yeah. Well, we're going to cover a little bit of history tonight. First of all, and this is interesting in itself because you might recall Justice Procé many years ago met here every meeting. And before we did American Peril, which most everybody here I'm sure is familiar with, the tape that went around the world several times, we originally spoke here, myself, and there were many other parties that were involved in trying to bring everybody up to speed on what was going on around the country. Well, things have gone full circle. And you might recall when I was here the last time, it was, in fact, this is where this place, right where we're standing right now, is where the term Mark from Michigan was coined by that guy right there, right over here in the corner. What do we call this guy? Well, let's call him Mark from Michigan. Okay, so that stuck. Well, you might recall when we stood up here, there was a thing that I did long before we got involved and created a network because we had to have a place to speak, called Republic Radio. And before all the other activities I was involved with, I was very quietly behind the scenes throwing information out everywhere we could, anonymously. We fed everybody as much data as we could collect. We meaning, well, a little group of people called the Little Brother Information Network. Remember when I was here and I said, that's right, we're the Little Brother Information Network. Big Brother is watching and Little Brother has a very big mouth. It's been many years since you have seen this. Well, on August 25th of 1997, it is obvious that somebody was paying attention and has been listening to everything we've been saying, because if you were reading Time magazine, Slime as we call it, for August 25th, 1997, the death of privacy. Of course, this isn't happening. Go back to sleep. It's irrelevant, right? You might recall invasion of privacy. Our right to be left alone has disappeared bit by bit in little brotherly steps. Wonder where they got that idea from. Oops, or dope, as Homer would say. Still, I love what this end caption says. Still, we've got something in return, and it's not all bad. That's like the old joke. It was translated from Russian for me many years ago by a friend who was a defector. He goes, there's an old Russian joke that's not funny. He goes, when the communists took over, the political commissars went from farm to farm, and they told every farmer to take all of his chickens, all of his pigs, all the horses, the cats, the dogs, and put them in the house with him. And if you don't do this, we will shoot you. Well, of course, the farmer did what he was told. He said because he wanted to live, and also, well, they had all the guns, and he basically had all the farm animals. Well, a year later, the commissar comes back, and he goes, today, you may take the chickens out of your house. Look at how much we have done for you. Look at how much of a friend we are to the people. Of course, the horses, the pigs, the cats, the dogs, and everything that wasn't there before was still there, but the idea was to just take the pressure valve and open up and just let a little steam on. That's what this is all about, little bits and pieces like this you see in the controlled press. The idea is, and the reason I wanted to do this is because you might remember this picture from Justice Procé from Time magazine for June 26th of 1995, just after the Oklahoma bombing. And what did Slime magazine say then? Well, let's see. In their New World Order, let's see. In it, the New World Order has already taken over much of the government. The federal alphabet soup agencies are arming street gangs. America, of course, is being exploited. nurtured for further exploitation aims. Carefully planted legal loopholes are being used to usurp the government, etc., etc. And then right over here we have, oh, that's right, the last paragraph, page 61. Microchips will be implanted in every newborn child, enabling the government to track each move by a new generation of citizens. Americans will live in slavery unless, quote, unquote, da-da-da-da. Well, I was just fascinated because, you know, if you can't beat them, you kind of, well, as we say, if you can't stop a punch, you deflect a punch. So for those of you who don't enjoy this picture in Time magazine, with the microchip on the ear, which of course is the kind of a slap in the face, much as this particular piece. I know this is hard for radio, but I want to do this. Most people who remember the article was done on me in Time magazine might recall that there was a little bit of a burp that was done here intentionally also. Kind of like this article 2 years later. Well, they told you we're all crazy. I read the piece in the article, right, about microchipping critters, people, etc. And what was the very next advertisement that was done? Microchip Fluffy, so you'll know where Fluffy is when the time comes, okay? We're all crazy about the next big advertiser, which, by the way, was New Home Again, a critical link between lost and found. And you might also put comma and tyranny. Well, isn't it interesting how things have changed? Now, this article is worth reading because, of course, well, it talks about the fact that, sure, you're going into a police state, but most of the trains will kind of run on time, won't they? Well, of course you're going to a police state, but it won't be so bad. After all, the government won't make any more mistakes than your banks do. Oh, that's right. When you have the debit card instead of currency, the government will make no greater number of mistakes than the banks will. Of course, when the bank makes a mistake, as we all know, what happens? You are at fault, not the bank. Now, I've had a lot of young students today. I had a lot of fun today. It's funny how you have ups and downs when you work at places like we do, and I work at the U of M. And one of the interesting things I had to have happen today was to sit down for just a minute, and a couple of young students who were just back for college started to strike up a conversation. We were going back and forth, and one thing led to another, which led to talking about government and the problems in government and where things are going and where school's going and how school's not teaching about government, which then led into the chip and the microchip and, of course, also the national ID card. And I asked the two young gentlemen that were there, which then became 3, which then became 5, which then became 7, do you all have this M card? And the one guy goes, oh, yes, I have it right here. And he reaches in the pocket and pulls it. I said, well, that is the national ID card. Well, it has a chip. No, I said it has as I pointed out, as we said many years ago in this very room, it is a microprocessor now. It has 7 separate chip assemblies. It is a massive amount of data. You can only access 3 of them. And he goes, oh, I said, well it's not that complete, is it? I said, well, you should check your school records and your school rules. Right now at the University of Michigan, it is stated that you will not be able to access your grades or your school papers if you do not accept the national ID card, which also means that your face will be data screened, in other words, digitized and put in the national database. 2 years ago, which is not just a short time after the Oklahoma bombing, as a matter of fact, which is a benchmark of time, the Senate was openly discussing the fact that over 54 million Americans, through guile and deceit and deception and contract, have already been scanned and put into the federal system. Now think about that. 54 million people means out of 256, 275, we won't call all the illegal aliens, okay? But out of them, we know that at least now 1/5 of the population in one form or another has been digitized, and presently that image is under the control of a government agency. But who else accesses it? Well, 5 years ago, when we first brought this up, Hall, remember, absolute, uncategorical denial that a national ID card even existed. Why? To buy time. In reality now, we've seen many different aspects of this. You might